Mental Health Month, so it's very appropriate that we dive into this topic, especially as we look at life, both at work, at play, in a post-COVID environment. And, we know that a lot of employees are struggling, with a range of feelings, because this is certainly not anything anyone has experienced before. The stress, the isolation, the loneliness, the uncertainty is something that I know that a lot of people are grappling with, and also the frustration and fear in terms of when do you move forward, how do you move forward. And when this all started, one of the first things that I talked about to our alums and to many of our friends is make sure you take care of your mental health, because at the end of the day it's really all you have. And so today we've amassed a team of experts in the behavioral health arena to talk to us about some of the things that they've observed during this time and how best employees can prepare for them, a post-COVID environment. I know some people went back to work today. So our panelists today are Jama Dodson, Executive Director of St. Louis Mental Health Board. Thank you for joining us, Jama. Joseph Yancey, Executive Director for Places for People. Dr. Bart Andrews, Chief Clinical Office for Behavioral Health Response, and Sandy Piper, co-founder of Chesterfield Counseling Associates. We're glad that you can all join us today. So by way of introducing our audience to you, if you can tell us a little bit about your organization. So Joe, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Thank you, Yemi. Places for People is a community mental health center. It is actually the one certified community behavioral health organization in St. Louis City and County. Our focus is across the lifespan, includes various levels of care, outpatient, again, across the lifespan, both substance use disorder treatment and mental health treatment, as well as a pretty significant rehabilitation level that includes high intense levels of community-based mental health treatment and services. It includes a crisis and everything else. So that in a nutshell is who we are.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Sandy.
Hi. So I'm Sandy Piper with Chesterfield Counseling Associates. Joe's much fancier than I am. He does more, but I really feel like I work with people to help them get the kind of life that they want. A lot of people are out there and they just feel like life isn't as good as it could be. And so we provide various levels of service. We try to be able to serve anyone who comes to us. We have an internship program here, so that enables us to meet needs of people who can't necessarily afford the typical clinician in Chesterfield.
Thank you, Sandy. Jama.
Hi, good morning. I'm, as Yemi said, Jama Dodson, the director of St. Louis Mental Health Board. And the St. Louis Mental Health Board is a independent governmental taxing authority in the city of St. Louis that actually collects taxes for mental health and for children's services and redistributes them in the form of funding to nonprofits around the community that do direct service. We've been in operation about 25 years and are proud to say we want to make our community better by the quality services that we fund.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Bart, and I'll ask you to unmute yourself so we can hear you.
Oh, thanks for the reminder. I would have blown that, so thank you. So I work at Behavioral Health Response. BHR is the Access Crisis Intervention Provider for the Eastern region of Missouri. We have been in business since 1995, so we answer crisis calls, we send out mobile outreach teams, we work with hospitals. We are really fortunate to have been able to work with Places for People and the St. Louis Mental Health Board, and they have been amazing partners. Our specialty is really making sure that we are the region's safety net. You don't need to have any insurance. Everybody who calls us is eligible for services. Our goal is to help people in real time where they are at. So you can call us. We can send folks out to you. We were the first crisis telehealth provider in the state of Missouri. We started doing telehealth services over 10 years ago, and we've really expanded that. And it's really important that folks know out there, there is help out there 24/7. Even if you're concerned about being able to pay for services, BHR is available. We're there, and you don't need to worry about that. You call us and we're going to help you.
That's really good to know. Thank you for providing an overview of the respective work that you all do in the community. And to our audience members out there, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat box and I'll try and grab them as we go through our time with our panelists today. So my first question to all of you is, how are you holding up during this pandemic? And you know, we'll start with Sandy. I happen to talk to Sandy a great deal during the course of the week. Yes.
I'm actually busier than ever. Counseling is considered an essential service, so we never really closed. And we transitioned to telehealth. We do, you know, we've worked on the phones, and then I've still seen people in person. We've maintained good social distance with that, but I've still seen people in person. So I have been amazingly busy because I think people are, they need that face-to-face contact sometimes, and so they come in and see me.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Bart, how are you holding up?
It's been quite a ride, Yemi. So I'm blessed to be working and be able to do things that I like to do. I've seen so many friends and colleagues laid off, and if folks aren't aware, the massive layoffs going on in healthcare right now are just devastating and across many professions. So it's good to be busy. At first, because BHR is in the middle of so many different agencies and everybody was changing their protocols and procedures because of COVID, we were in for a couple of weeks just in this constant space of updating and changing and trying to keep pace with all the changes. It's nice that things have kind of settled down now. So there certainly is, there seems to be some balance, but there's so much to do. So right now we're working on how do we make sure that folks have access to services? Are we evaluating these new procedures we put in place? And we're getting ready to start this kind of return. We switched to all of our staff got removed from in-office to remote. So all of our clinicians who used the crisis line workers who used to be in the office, we moved them remotely. Our CEO, Pat Coleman, who is incredibly amazing, made the decision that we needed to do that. So we've been adjusting to all that stuff. At the same time, we're trying to figure out how do we make sure that we're meeting the needs of our community and making sure that we're not missing out on things and doing the best we can to make sure that as folks transition back and things start returning to quote unquote normal, I think that's when things are going to get, I think that's what's going to be the hard part. This crisis has been hard, but I think it's going to be really hard as we start returning to this semblance of normality.
Wow. Joe, thoughts?
Yeah, well, thank you. Let me first just say that I think that there's nobody whose emotional well-being has not been impacted over the last 6 weeks. If you tell me that it is not, then you are not human. So, you know, certainly I will admit very openly that I've had periods of anxiety and some depression because this is unknown and it is so uncertain. So I have tried to make, and I think it's critical that we all try to make a conscious effort to combat that. First off, recognize it, and then combat that through, you know, self-care strategies that we could talk about later. But it's been challenging.
Yeah, you know, thanks for your candidness and your authenticity and sharing kind of your personal, you know, experience with this, because it's definitely not business as usual. It certainly is challenging. You know, you have those anxious moments of where you wake up at 3 a.m. You know, that's what it is, 3:33 a.m. I don't know what it is. I always seem to wake up at that time. And you're thinking, okay, what else did I not think of that I need to address, you know, certainly over the next couple of weeks. So Jama, I'm actually going to pivot and ask you, you know, for organizational leaders, how do we take care of ourselves during this time of uncertainty? Because, you know, everything's coming at us, you know, a mile a minute.
That's
and
right.
we have people that are depending on us as well.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head by saying first you do have to take care of yourself. You know, the old saw about, you know, first take the oxygen and, you know, first take your oxygen and then apply it to your seatmate if you have to. And that's the case with organizational heads of organizations. That I think that one of the things that I would say too is as much as there is responsibility at the top, so to speak, there's also, in our case especially, I feel very fortunate to have a really great staff who we share the burden of leadership. So there's not really just one leader, there are multiple leaders, and we each have our different set of skills. And I am just grateful for the fact that we have that, those resources. So we talk about things a lot, maybe too much sometimes,
Right.
But we try to be transparent. We try to figure things out. Like Joe, I will admit that I've been a little crusty a few times. I'm usually a pretty mellow person, and
I like how you put that, crusty.
Yeah.
I'm going to borrow that. Yes.
So I'm trying to do better. It helps when you look and see your face in the video, because then you know whether you're reacting or overreacting. But no, I don't want to be playing too loose with it. But I think recognizing part of what is important as a leader is to recognize that everybody's there in a different way. Every person takes it in it takes a different form. And just being compassionate to yourself and to the others in your world, and that goes an awful long way.
Yeah, that's so true. Compassion is the key word. I've been reading a lot of articles about, you know, life in a post-COVID era, and compassion is one of the things that, you know, everybody seems to be emphasizing in those articles, and how it's important that, you know, you not only have built trust, because that's what's going to get you through kind of this post-COVID era, and also, you know, minimize stress for everyone involved. And I can certainly appreciate, you know, the shared leadership that you talked about there. Joe, I'd like to go back to you in terms of, you know, what are some ways in which leaders can minimize stress? You know, what are some coping strategies?
Well, I think from the standpoint or the viewpoint of a leader, that we need to recognize that, again, what we have all collectively experienced over the last several weeks is, in essence, a trauma. And I think from a leader perspective, that you have to really be very conscious and be very visible in your actions and your communication around the principles of trauma. And those are basically safety. First off, safety. I mean, and you have to accentuate that, I believe, as the leader of an organization, for the people that work for you, that is your highest priority. Mission, yes, but we're not going to have people walking into something that they're going to be harmed for. That's not what we do. So safety, I think, is critical. And just real quickly, choice, that people have choice, that, you know, I think we're going to see significant issues is those organizations or companies that say, you don't have a choice. You just, you know, like the meat packer, so to speak. That is so disempowering. Empowerment, collaboration, making decisions with as many people as you can, not just your leadership team, bringing those other voices into the decision-making process, and then empowerment. You know, I mean, how, you know, being very thoughtful and conscious about how can I empower the people that do this work, or the people that I'm leading. All those 4 or 5 rather principles of trauma-informed, I think, fit very beautifully with, from a leadership perspective, where we are today.
Thank you, Joe. Sandy, do you want to offer some strategies for minimizing stress during these times?
Well, you were talking about minimizing stress for leaders and also, you know, the people underneath you. I think, to Joe's point, this is a disaster. We've just been through a national disaster, And we have a lot of uncertainty, which creates anxiety, because anxiety is almost always about the future. Well, we have no idea what's going to happen in the future right now, because we've never done this before. So we need to, as leaders, I think, and for ourselves too, we need to create some certainty by coming up with some structures. Like, these are the things that are going to happen when you come back to work, and these are the things that we're going to do. And as Joe said, collaboration is a good way to do that. Like, put some suggestions out and then ask for feedback so people feel like they're involved. It helps them feel more in control. And then over communicate. That's the other thing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's better. You're far better to over communicate. People feel very alone, and we by over communicating, they know that you're there. Maybe they only look at every 5th email, but they see that you've contacted them 5 times, and it just offers some reassurance.
Thank you, Sandy. Bart? I think we need to unmute you.
Thought I was unmuted. So there was this great study that looked at what makes good military leaders, and they found it wasn't necessarily people who made the best decisions, but who could make quick decisions in a crisis, right? And so one of the things that really struck me early on is that nobody's been through a pandemic before, so nobody knows what the hell they're doing, right?
True.
So where some people might have been freaked out about that created a lot of freedom for me. It's like, well, since nobody knows what the hell they're doing, I guess we can kind of make this up as we go a little bit, right? That there's no real constraints here. So that was very freeing. So part of this was knowing that you don't always know what's right. And so you've got to make decisions, and echoing the things that Jama and Sandy and Joe have already said, that getting your team, include them in that process, so that you're providing some certainty, not in what the outcome is going to be, but you're providing some certainty is that we as a team can do this. We can make some decisions, and tell me what you think, right? And what do you think will work, and what do you don't think will work? And also, as a leader, sometimes it's hard, and my boss models this really well. Sometimes the boss has got to make decisions that's going to impact some people negatively, but you've got to make decisions based on your mission and your organization. So those are other things that I think are really important. When things were really tough for me, and there were some days in there, oh my God, when it was just so bleak and dark and we didn't know what was going to happen, right? Are we going to be able to even keep working? Where it's like, there's people out there right now that need us. So what do we need to do so that we can help the people that need us? And for me, that was incredibly empowering. And that culture at BHR, our team members are so focused on, let's make sure that we're there for the folks that need us, that you can build on that, right? The flip side of that is letting people be vulnerable, letting people share their concerns and fears, because this is scary stuff, right? This is incredibly scary stuff. And trying to say, oh, there's nothing to be afraid of, that's not true. There's plenty of things to be afraid of. Those fears are really quite rational. So let's talk about them, and let's figure out what we can do to work through them, right? What do we do about these fears? So I think that idea of that, hey, this is all uncertain. Let's at least find a path. Even if we don't know if it's going to work, let's give this a shot. And it's interesting because that works really, really well a lot of the time.
Thank you for that. So I'm going to grab a question from one of our audience members. And the question is, would now be a good time to encourage employers who don't already do so to begin offering employee assistance programs or plans? What are your thoughts on that? So Bart, I see you giving the thumbs up that, this is something that should be done right now. Can you walk us through what that process even looks like for organizations that don't have it?
So employee assistance programs go way back, and it started really out of the substance use treatment model, that we want to make sure that employees could get help if employers notice a substance use issue, and it really kind of blossomed into its own industry. So employee assistance programs are a service. It's a little like insurance, although it's not nearly as expensive as paying for insurance, where you can buy packages for certain types of services. Sometimes those packages are just information referrals. So there's a place where your employees can call to get connected with services or get information about legal or counseling. But most EAPs include a limited set of counseling sessions. Some are 1 to 3 sessions, some are 3 to 6, some have unlimited. It's a nice tool for employers to have when they're dealing with employees who are struggling with emotional issues, family issues, to say, hey, we care about you. And here's a number that you can call. Most EAPs are 24/7, so that your staff can call them 24/7. And EAPs are incredibly good at getting people seen very quickly. The whole model is based on, think about it, currently right now, if you call a psychologist or a psychiatrist, you can be put on a wait list for a pretty long time. EAPs are going to be really good about getting you right away. Often the people answering, and my agency answers the phones for employee assistance programs. You're going to get a trained clinician 24/7 to provide immediate assistance, and they're going to link you with a provider very quickly for some short-term crisis intervention. So there's lots of good EAP providers, and EAPs really are not particularly expensive. It's such a good investment for employers. So if you don't have an EAP, there's lots of providers both locally and nationally, and it's something you really should look into.
Thank you for that. Joe, is that something that your agency provides, or do you intersect at any point with EAPs across the region?
So yes, we absolutely provide employee assistance EAP services. We do not, I mean, we contract for those. I shouldn't say we provide them, but yes, they are available to our employees. We have not got into that space, and because we've got great partners like VHR and others out there that are doing that work, and boy, there's certainly enough work to go around when we talk about emotional well-being, simply for no other reason, because it has not got the attention it deserves forever. So we operate and have that available, but no, we do not provide that. Yemi.
Okay. So I know, some of you are direct service providers. I'm trying to help, some of our audience members, understand, when do you know you're in trouble and you need to seek help? Because some folks will fight it and say, I got this, I'm okay. But, there's some things that would suggest to either, the clinical psychiatrist that, you might need to go get help. So, Sandy, can you walk us through at what point should people seek out help?
Well, there's always the extreme cases where you have, what's called suicidal ideation, where you have, thoughts that just kind of intrude into your mind, and they are generally about how to harm yourself. So that's kind of that's when it really starts to get bad, is when you have those on a continual basis. You're crying, you can't get out of bed. So extreme end of depression. But it would be good if you sought intervention prior to that. So if you feel like life is kind of flat, if you were just sort of going through the motions, if you don't have, if you look forward and you're not seeing a lot of hope, I think that's a really good time to seek out help. It's before you hit rock bottom.
Good point. Thank you for that. Bart, do you have any, I see you're shaking your head. Do you have any additions to that?
I think Sandy really hit the nail on the head. I like to also lower that barrier, because Sandy did a good job talking about these extreme cases. Boy, if you're just feeling a little yucky and things don't feel good, reaching out and talking to a therapist is an amazing thing. And this whole idea that Sandy pointed out, the sooner that you get help and the sooner you talk to somebody, it can really prevent you sliding down. So this idea of kind of a more preventive approach, as a person in recovery who's dealt with all kinds of stuff, that feeling when you're just sick and tired of being sick and tired all the time, that's a really good sign. If you're feeling stuck, or you're just feeling things aren't going the way they should, I think one of the things, unfortunately, culturally, we have some our notions of what's successful and what's it like being an adult is that you handle things on your own. And what's really interesting to me is that so many of us that handle things on our own are the first people to say, why don't you reach out and talk to somebody, right? Why aren't you getting help on these things? So we've got this real duplicitous nature in the messages that we give to folks. And I think it's really important that we say that it's really natural that talking is therapeutic, that getting support is therapeutic. We're really creatures that benefit from social support. And so we really need to normalize this sense, hey, if you're just feeling a little off and you feel like talking to somebody would help, please do it. It's an absolutely amazing thing. And there's a great book a therapist wrote called I Think You Should Talk to Somebody. It just came out last year. It's such an amazing book about a therapist's own struggle in her life and how she goes to see a therapist. And what an amazing story it is. And those of us who are therapists who've been in therapy will tell you, please, the sooner the better. And here's the other thing. It never hurts. There's no downside to talking to somebody. So if you have the opportunity, please do it.
Thank you for that. So I'll grab another question from a member of our audience. And we've heard a lot of, leadership talk about, this is your chance to build resilience. This is your chance to, work with your team on emotional intelligence. What, if any, suggestions do you have for building resilience and emotional intelligence, really following what is essentially a collective traumatic experience? And Jama, we'd go with you to dive into that question.
I was thinking about that. I wish I had been so ambitious. I was just trying to get through every day, one day at a time. I think that some of the things that we've talked about already are part of that resilience. When you begin to work together more, when you group problem solve, those are the things that build an organization's resilience. We have a small organization. Ours is 11 staff people now. And so it's pretty easy to get around 11 people and talk to most of them. Whereas I know some of you have a lot more people that you have to work with. But I think that what I was really going to say is that the way that I was just reading something not too long ago that said, set some goals for what you want to do, and then just do small things every day. Don't set forth a goal that you're going to completely restructure your organization because you've got all this downtime or whatever. Set some realistic goals that you can accomplish. Keep people in the loop, get their thoughts about it, and then just work on something every day. And it also makes you have a greater sense of control over what's going on in your organization. So everybody has a focus, everybody has the ability to participate in it. And that would be my piece of advice.
Yemi, okay.
Oh, Sandy, thoughts about resiliency?
So I think one of the things, I'm gonna call you out, Yemi. One of the things I think you've done well at Focus is you've encouraged people during this time to sort of develop their skills and in new directions. So Focus has had to pivot how programs are run, and that means the directors have had to pivot as well. And so I think focusing on growth, focusing on the positive, or even encouraging people, hey, is there something that you've, thought about doing and it's just, maybe it's of interest to you. Like, I don't know, maybe you've got this weird interest in physics. For me, that would be a weird interest. But encourage them to look at some of the new offerings on the internet, or if they feel like, dance class is something they've always wanted to take, but their mom didn't let them do it when they were kids. There's a lot of dance classes that are offered on the internet even. So encourage that sort of forward looking and then developing new interests, new skills.
Thank you, Sandy. Bart.
So I love that question actually came from my boss, which just cracks me up. One of the things that Tiffany actually did, because when we talk about resilience, people use that word a lot. And I think one of the things that's really clear is that resilience is about taking action when things suck, right? How do I keep moving forward? And one of the things Tiffany did right away at BHR is we just started doing these, right at the beginning of COVID, we started doing these 30-minute command meetings every single day, right? These little bitty meetings, right? It doesn't seem like a lot, but it was, because it sends a lot of messages. Hey, we're doing this. We're going to do this. And every single day, we're going to do this little thing to move us forward just a little bit, right?
Right.
And it's incredibly successful. So I think that part of this is our message is that even when things are horrible, there's always something we can do. It's also about getting people out of their heads, right? When people get overwhelmed emotionally and they retreat and they get paralyzed, it can be really hard to get them unstuck. And as Sandy and Jama already talked about, these little steps that we can take, little things, little actions, right? Things to get people in a routine, things to let them know, hey, you can do this. And so you really want to set people up for success. So I always get a little concerned when we talk about resilience, because sometimes it feels like we're blaming the person who's suffering, right? You just aren't resilient enough. And I think it's the opposite. It really is, hey, there's some things that we can do to help support you. And here's how we do that. And we set that bar at low at first, then you build a little bit. So this whole idea of getting people to take action, particularly when they don't feel like taking action, I think is really key to resilience building.
Huh. Those are very good points that you've all outlined. So I'm going to grab another question. Someone asked, how can we create a mental health support group at work? This is people starting to get into that post-COVID. We're going back to work. We know that many people went back to work yesterday. What can we do? Joe, we'll take your response on this one in terms of creating mental health support groups at work.
Well, first off, I think that's an absolutely fantastic idea, and it would be one, if every organization and company did that, I think it would be extremely helpful. I don't think that's rocket science by any means at all. I think, and you do not necessarily even need a professional mental health person or anything like that there. To me, a mental health support group really, and it doesn't have to occur in a pandemic. Ideally, it would occur on a regular basis because our emotional well-being doesn't turn on, our well-being doesn't get bad or good necessarily due to a pandemic. I would just say, just do it, begin to start to let it be known that this is going to happen. It may start off small, but typically these things tend to grow over time as people start to spread the word by mouth. And I think just allowing people the freedom and the space to be able to express themselves and to do it in a safe manner. That is the key. It's got to be safe. Mm-hmm. We talked about that earlier in the principle. So whatever is said in here stays in here, and the ground rules need to be set. But once you have that structure in place, I think it's just a matter of letting people express themselves, giving them a chance to, and have people be able to respond. And we see amazing magic happen in those situations. So no rocket science. If somebody wants to do it, just do it.
Okay, thank you.
And I think you should do it too, by the way.
Right, yeah. So to those of you that are listening, if this is something that, you'd like to encourage your employers to do, I think you'd probably be surprised how many people will be open to having these types of conversations. And Joe just outlining, the rules of engagement, what stays or what you talk about stays here is key to making people feel comfortable about sharing. One of the things that we've been looking at is, we start to have conversations around, yes, the Vegas principle is, how do you address or manage, team members who refuse to wear a mask versus those who are insistent on, following all the CDC advisories. How do you manage those employees? What are your suggestions on that? And this is open to all. Bart, you want to start out with?
Yeah, I mean, it's a sticky issue. And since I was just reading an attorney's thread on this whole issue, the idea that we do need to make reasonable accommodations for folks, right? And so I think whenever an employee, we always, when this sort of things come up, our first response is this is a disciplinary issue. And I think any disciplinary issue or anything that comes up first, it's an understanding issue. Do I really know what's going on with this employee? What is driving this issue? What are they concerned about with the mask? So the first step in dealing with this issue is the discovery process. What is the barrier? What are the challenges with the mask? Make sure that you get a really, really good understanding of what's driving it. right? So that's key. The second is, can we accommodate, right? So are there realistic accommodations for this? So is there a way for this person to work in a manner where them not wearing a mask isn't putting anybody else in jeopardy? So I think that as BHR over the last 8 weeks, this balance between client safety and staff safety sometimes is a little bit of a misnomer because they're both intimately connected, right? It's really what's in everybody's best interest in terms of safety.
Mm.
And so some of that is really defining. And two, can this person do the job that they're required to do and not wear a mask, right? And in terms of your client safety, is it safe for them? Is it safe for others? And so one of the areas to really talk about is there the legitimate accommodations we can make, and what are your policies and procedures around this? So that's a really good thing to be aware of. What kind of policies do you have in place? How is HR involved in this? Let's get, if there is an accommodation that needs to be met, let's get that in writing so we know what that accommodation is. And if we can reasonably accommodate that and it works out for everybody, fantastic. If there's no way that we can accommodate that request because the job duties make that impossible, then are there other things that this person can do? Or do we need to have a more challenging conversation about their role going forward in the agency if they can't do this for whatever reason that is? And that's done with compassion and love, not with, oh, you're a horrible person because you don't want to wear this mask. But hey, how do we go forward when really for you to do X, Y, and Z, you're going to have to wear a mask and there's no way around that. So I think finding solutions and giving ear to that is probably that's kind of the step-by-step process I'd go through with that situation.
Thank you for that. Compassion is the key at the end of the day, especially in situations of this nature. So I'm curious about, your leadership during this era. How has it evolved? Gemma, we'll start with you. What are some of the lessons in leadership that you've learned that is making you a better leader?
Well, I think one of the things that I've really been learning, and I'm still in the process of, is because everything is virtual now, it is actually somewhat easier to gather people together and have a good a conversation, not even just internal people, but if you're working on a common social problem, it's a lot easier to actually convene a group and talk it through and come up with a plan in some respects. So I don't know if that's learning about leadership, but it's certainly learning a different style of leadership. What I've also been learning about is just the fact that I am in the process of doing my job. I can sometimes be insensitive to my own, behavior, body language, those kind of things. And this virtual environment, I think I alluded to it a little earlier, is actually helping me to become more sensitive to how I'm looking. If I disagree with somebody, can I maintain my facial composure, or do I go, or something? I mean, I know that does seem very, very basic. I guess I'm a simple person, but
no,
but
it's the truth.
I've been learning a lot about what I do that I didn't know before. So I'm finding that fascinating, actually. And I guess the other part is I'm learning so much more about the differences in my staff. Some people are really just very afraid to come back to the office and engage, and other people are saying, what the heck are we talking about wearing masks for? We could just get on with it,
Right.
and so it has shown me how I have to tailor my leadership to different people in different ways, yet still look at the organization, the best interest of our mission. And that's been a slightly new muscle.
Right, meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
And
that's always good.
Yes, yeah. And you're certainly right about, the body language. I'm actually attending a webinar on, your digital presence. So we're learning all sorts of new things. Sandy, what have you learned about, how you lead, how you interact, how you communicate?
That's interesting because I have a business partner, a co-founder, and he was asking me a question, and I was sort of in problem solving mode, and I immediately just did something in relation to his question. And he actually got on me a little bit about it. One of the things I've noticed about myself is when I get sort of in that, go, go, go mode, I'm like, okay, I've got this problem, and this problem. I don't communicate well all the time. So I'm learning to communicate better, to slow down a little bit, because I go too fast.
Okay, thank you. Joe? You've been at this for a minute.
Yeah, for a minute, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for saying a minute as opposed to an hour. But I think that what I've, learned is really that, you cannot predict, even though you think you know your folks, the people that you are in fact are leading and maybe have led for some time, you really don't know how they are going to respond to something that has never ever happened before, in an experience that nobody has ever had that experience. So some of the things, and some of it's been already talked about, but one is the over communication. I mean, saying it 10 times all the time, is just so critical. Clarity in terms of that, because it's amazing how much chaos messaging can create in a situation like this if you are not really conscious of it. And I guess the other thing is that it really has given me a lot of practice in terms of utilizing different leadership styles, because what might have worked with somebody a month ago or 3 months ago, I may have to change that style up a little bit today. So I think that I think quite honestly it's been a great a great opportunity to develop, even to develop and sharpen some other things that maybe we haven't pulled out of the toolbox in a little bit. So it's been
it's been a leadership immersion experience. You learn something new every day, and you develop new sort of leadership skills for your toolkit, so to speak. Bart, what's changing with you? What's evolving with you?
Well, and building on what Joe was talking about, one of the things when I love crisis response. It's one of the things I fell in love with 22 years ago. And so this was a crisis. So there was a level of excitement for me. Let's do things. And so as a boss, often I was flooding folks with tons of stuff. A little secret to all us bosses, your employees can't do all the things you ask them to do. It's absolutely impossible. And they try to figure out what are the most important things that you want when you're flooding them with all this stuff. And so for me as a leader, it was taking a step to realize, okay, I'm asking a lot. What are the things that are really most important to me? I may have made 10 suggestions, but a couple of those actually maybe weren't suggestions. They were things that absolutely had to be done. And the other 8 were things that, hey, let's think about this. Let's explore this. They're not a big priority. So one of the things I had to start figuring out right away the first couple of weeks is when I started making suggestions or giving ideas, hey, this is something we need to do. Let me know where you're at with this in a couple of days versus, hey, think about this. What do you think about that? And can we try this? So being really clear about, hey, these are things I absolutely have to have or we need to do. And here's some things I want you to think about, try out, let me know that I'm not gonna be attending to, but we'll see how it goes, right? So that was key. As part of that, you can be a boss without being a good follower, but I don't believe you can be a good leader without knowing how to follow. And I think that the aspects of that followership component of leadership is something that really, really, really does not get enough attention. And there's times when you really need to feel and get the vibe for your staff to know when you need to follow where they're going, as opposed to always being the lead and being in charge, right?
Right.
I think there's a balance there. Obviously, when you're the leader, you've got responsibilities, but there's times when you really need to say, oh, hey, these folks are doing something. I'm going to follow along with that, right? So I think that's really important and something that really kind of hit home for me the last 3-4 weeks.
I'd also say that's humility. That servant leadership that you've all described, and certainly what you're doing. So my final question to all of you is, I'd like for you to share You know, a self-care strategy in all of this. How are you taking care of yourself? So I know Sandy has an interest in physics, random, you know, interest in physics, but I'm curious as to, you know, what are you doing to, you know, just give you a moment in time to relax? You know, I'll just throw in, you know, for me, it's playing the piano, which is something that I don't do often. But you know, yeah, it's like playing the piano. So, Joe, what do you do?
Well, I think, you know, for me, it's, I've been doing a lot of walking. We were talking about that before we actually started the program. But I've also taken the time to be able to try to stay more connected with the people I love and care about. And that has been extremely helpful for me as well. I think the ability to be compassionate, to give love, to feel the caring, and all those kinds of things just has a multiple effect coming back. So that's what I try to do, or I've tried to do. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joe. Sandy, what do you do for fun to relax you?
You know, self-care isn't an area that I excel in general. So I've been working on it, but the thing for me, learning new things, and I mentioned that earlier, that's really it gives me a charge. It helps me even relax. So I've enrolled in some different classes online, things that I was interested in for a long time. And so I finally just pulled the trigger.
Okay, great. Jama?
Well, like Joe mentioned, I do a lot of walking with my dogs. I have 2 dogs, and they are very strong. So I'm working my muscles while I'm walking them. But so I kind of go from one extreme to the other. And my other relaxation is classic movie therapy. So I like old movies, and I love have more time to indulge.
Okay, great. And Dr. Andrews?
Well, I'm a gym rat, and when that first week of March, when it was really clear that everything was going to shut down, I knew the gyms weren't going to stay up, and I was going to panic. I'm a person in recovery, and working out is incredibly important to me just staying sane. And so I researched spinning bikes, and I bought this spinning bike. And I'm telling you, waiting for that spinning bike to show up was I was panicked that COVID was going to shut transportation down. I was going to get this spinning bike. The world's falling apart, and we might all be dead soon. But my primary concern was, am I going to get my spinning bike? And I'll be honest, I got the spinning bike, and thank God, I love that thing. I'm on it every day. And I've got a ritual and a routine around it, and it really helps me kind of stay leveled. And it's really hard for me to stay too stressed if I get a good spin in. So that
Wow, that is great. You know, I think, you know, post-COVID, we're going to see a lot of fit people out there with the walking, the spinning bikes, you name it. You know, we're all going to be looking pretty good. So, you know, it looks like we are out of time, but I want to thank you all for sharing with us, you know, the important things that we need to be aware of where mental health is concerned. You know, certainly communication is important, collaboration is important, authenticity is important, humble leadership is important, and meeting people where they are. You know, I think that's very important for everyone to think about. And, you know, if you're struggling at this point in time, feel free to look up any of the agencies that we've mentioned here. You know, BHR, you can go to their website or call 314-469-6644. They're available 24/7. Places for People, you can go to their website. Gemma, how can people, you know, engage with you as well?
We have a website also, and I was going to bring to your attention, we have a blog on our website that's all devoted to, in fact, it's not even finished yet because it's 30 days of self-care.
Oh, wow.
It's got really great suggestions, and our website is www.stlmhb.com.
Okay, great. And Joe, your website, is it just www Places for People?
Yeah, I'm sending it now, www.placesforpeople.org.
Okay, so you have the resources that you need to move forward, and we look forward to seeing all of you at our next forum. Thank you again, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks, Amy.
Bye.
Bye-bye.